I will start with the assertive's voice. I am a natural born assertive. It's fight, flight, make friends. The assertive is the fighter. Flight is the analyst. That will be the second voice. That is closer to what many of you have referred to as the late night FM DJ. And it will have an impact on their brain. And then I'll move to the make friends voice, the accommodator's voice, the friendly, smiling voice. The proposition, the hypothesis that we put in front of you guys is that the neuroscience rules are always rules. It has the same type of impact on every single person. The degree of impact varies, but the type of impact is always the same. So I would ask you to listen for the three voices and see what kind of an impact it has. The first voice will make them combative, the second voice will slow their brain down, and the third voice will pick their brain right back up. I'm a bank robber, bad guy trapped in a bank. You're a hostage negotiator. You don't know how many bad guy bank robbers there are. You don't know how many hostages we have. All you know is that it's your job to talk me out. You and your law enforcement colleagues have the bank surrounded. You have 4 things you cannot agree to. Yeah. 4 things you cannot do. You can't give me any weapons. You can't give me any transportation. You can't give me any drugs or alcohol. And you can't do a hostage exchange of any kind. People are not allowed to come in at all. People only come out. You know, in the movies, Eddie Murphy says, if I come in, you let some people go. You know, you're not going to do that.
Right. Got it.
We will simulate being over the phone, and then we'll start. Questions?
So that makes sense.
Okay.
As far as I can take as much drugs and alcohol as I want.
You're going to have to pass the test later, probably. But.
No, I think that makes sense.
All right. Well,
I'm ready to get crushed, but
you're ready to rock.
Yeah.
Okay. Say ring, ring.
Okay. Ring, ring.
I need a car in 60 seconds, or she dies.
I'm sorry, I won't be able to do that for you.
You want me to kill her right now? I'll kill her right now. I got a lot of hostages. I can throw one out every minute. You got 55 seconds.
How many hostages do you have in the bank?
Enough to go all day. 55 seconds.
And what's your name again?
I have no intention of telling you that. Are you an idiot? You've got 50 seconds.
How are you going to do it? You're just going to throw her out the door?
I'm going to put the gun to her head. I'm going to walk her to the front door. I'm going to cock the trigger so everybody sees that she's about to lose her life. And then I'm going to blow her brains all over the street. Is that specific enough for you? You got 50 seconds.
You know we've got the whole bank surrounded, so if you get too close to the door,
that's news to me?
Are you in danger
45
of getting too
seconds.
close to the door? We might be able to pull off a shot. I think you might want to be a little
40
safer about
seconds.
What'd you do this morning?
You have 40 seconds left in this hostage's life.
Yeah. So how'd you get into the bank this morning?
How do you think?
Just walked right in and just raised the gun and told everybody to go to the back or go to the front? Where'd you put everybody? Just like make sure that they're secure.
Something like that.
Who else is in the bank with you? Or did you come in alone?
35 seconds.
I'm glad your watch is working. Anybody else in there?
Is yours.
How did you pick this person to be number one? Or just a random choice because they're all equal to you?
Random choice.
Yeah. What do you think about the bank right now? Is everyone
I think I got 30 seconds before there's one less person in this bank. At least.
Why'd you pick this bank?
It was in a way. 30 seconds.
It's a very small bank.
27 seconds.
What else we got going on? What else is going on in
Well, in 25 seconds, what else is going on is either I'm leaving or a hostage is dead.
Yeah. Do you think you're leaving?
So one way or another, I'm leaving. You get 20 seconds.
Yeah. How might you go about leaving?
What part of I need a car do you not understand?
Well, how are you going to get to the car?
You've got 20 seconds. I'm
Will
going to
there
walk
be-
out the front door. You're going to get out of the way. I'm going to leave.
Are you going to step over the dead body to get to the car?
Yeah.
Well, what
It
if it's
sounds to
all-
me
what
like
if
there's
it's-
going to
what
be
if
at least one, because you got 15 seconds left for this hostage's life. Then we might stack them up.
Seems like you're going to have a pile of bodies.
It
and
does
then the
seem
car-
that way, doesn't it?
And then the car's not going to be able to go anywhere.
Yeah, I think so.
How do you think
15
you're gonna,
seconds.
how do you think you're going to make it over the pile of bodies without getting shot before you get into the car?
We will stop there. Thank you for volunteering.
Eric, same question, man. What would you do different? Hindsight's 2020. What were you trying to accomplish that you didn't get to?
So I thought, leading out of it, there was the whole introduction part. It was the first thing that popped into my head after it was over.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, didn't do that. Didn't say. Like in the book was like, hi, it's Brandon. You're talking to me now.
Yeah.
And so that whole exchange of setting it, which was the punch in the face maybe, that I just completely forgot about doing that.
Yeah.
So I wish I had done that. I think part of it was those initial kind of big. It seems like mirroring some stuff and doing those questions of. It seems like you have a plan here. Tell me more about how you plan on this implementation process.
That's interesting, and that actually answers some of our questions that have come in the room today. And you said, seems like you have a plan here. And then what was your follow-up to that?
What do you think this implementation process is going to be?
What does this look like, right? It seems like you got a plan here. How does this thing play out? That's really interesting. Okay, well, good. I like your assessment of yourself. So, out the gate, I need a car in 60 seconds. You apologized. And you said, I'm sorry. We're not going to be able to do that. I love that for several reasons. One, because right out the gate, you wanted to let this guy know, like, you can trust me. Anything that I say, you can take it to the bank and cash it in. I'm going to be honest with you. And then also that little part of I'm sorry, it's a great way to drop in a little dusting of empathy right before you drop a bomb on them. And so I kind of like that 1-2 comment. Like, I'm sorry. We're not going to be able to do that. At the very least, he might not be happy, but he knows he can probably trust what you have to say. And so you're setting that premise early on. And then your very next question is, how many hostages do you have? And I mean, so you tried to address the demand a little bit, and then you jumped right into information gathering, starting with what we talked about in the hallway. This is what you don't know. You weren't wasting any time getting into it. He didn't give you much. I got to admit, I was a little disappointed on his response to that, because I was like, that's a good question, man. Come on, give the guy a reward. But still, good question. And then you followed that with, what's your name again? Do you remember that moment? Like, what were you thinking? What were you trying to do? I'm sorry we can't do that. How many hostages do you have? What's your name again? Where were you going with that? Do you remember?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I think part of it was I was trying to get him to give me some piece of information about himself.
Okay.
Which I think was leading into what'd you do this morning, how'd you get in this morning, that kind of stuff.
All right. Yeah. Well,
that was the intent, but I think.
Good. Yeah. Exactly. The intent was really good, right?
The outright asking of it just gave him the opportunity to say, "No, I'm not telling you my freaking name."
Yeah. Well, you already know how you would change it, and that's exactly what I would suggest. If that's where you were trying to go with that, trying to drop in this, like, I think you might have told me your name, but I don't remember if you told me your name. So what's your name again? Right? Like, I definitely would have changed that, and you would have said either one of those two things. I think that's a good alternative. Let's see, where'd you go from here? How are you going to do it? Are you just going to take a couple people out? I didn't get all the words down, but again, implementation focus there. How's this going to look? How are you going to do it when you come out? How many people are going to be coming out with you? And then you dropped in, I really like this question, except for the fact that it's probably a yes question, but you asked them, are you in danger? I thought that was really good. I mean, I really did, because it's like you're trying to create an element of trust, And if like there are things that you're afraid of that are really going to cause harm to you, I'm someone you can talk to about those things. And so I probably would have changed this so that the answer would have been some sort of a no. But again, the intent was really on point. How'd you get into the bank this morning? Really good question. Who else is in the bank with you? Did you come alone? Right? So there's personalization, there's information gathering, right? Little wordsmith in there. But I like, again, the intent, and also this whole, like, who are the people, who's inside. Something these guys found out in crisis negotiation. If they could get the hostage taker to use the name of the hostage or hostages, the chances of them hurting that person drop by like 800%. And that was kind of where you were going. Like, all right, well, I can't be personalized here. He thinks I'm an asshole. Maybe I can personalize the hostages. And so I like that kind of last-ditch effort. Got to the end, why'd you pick this bank? What else is going on? How are you going to get to the car? I mean, you tried to pepper them with as many calibrated questions as you could think of. And I think there's probably a little wordsmithing you do here and there. But again, intention was good, and you're almost never going to go wrong using a skill. And so your total time, you went for 2 minutes and 52 seconds. So nice job there.
Would you say in all your career, has there ever been a situation where you say, it's really it's a no-win to go, there is no way to win this thing. It's a lose-lose. And does it ever get to that point where you feel like there's really nowhere to go? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, first of all, basic hostage negotiation stats, 93% close rate. All right. Which means 7% of the time it ain't going to work out. That it's there. Best chance of success is not a guarantee of success.
Sure.
And one of our challenges, Gary Nestner, my former boss at the hostage negotiation, crisis negotiation unit, he developed a set of criteria called high risk indicators. How do we spot this right off the bat? Is there a profile, to use a dirty word? We're doing the same thing now in business. There's some deals that you are never going to get. Right. Let's just recognize them sooner. It's not a sin to not get the deal. It's a sin to take a long time to not get the deal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's make it shorter.
Remember, you don't get in life what's fair, you get what you negotiate. If you want to become a better negotiator, click the link in the description below.
If I've got hostages and I call you and I say, listen, I want a car, I think I saw this one on your YouTube channel, I want a car in 60 seconds outside.
Right.
What's the first thing you say to me?
You want to try?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
So
You're the bad guy.
I'm the bad guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm going to blow this woman's head off if you don't give me a car in the next 60 seconds.
How am I supposed to do that?
Not my problem. You got 55 seconds.
All right, so if I wanted to do it, it's madness out here. It's chaos. I mean, this is Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey circus is organized compared to the nonsense that's going on out there. So even if I wanted to do it, I can't do it in that time frame.
I'm sure you're the FBI, you're the police. You can make anything happen. 50 seconds.
Sounds to me like you're not going to give me a chance.
I'm giving you a chance right now. 50 seconds, Chris. There's plenty of cars out there. Go get one of the cars and pull it up outside, or I'm going to blow her head off.
Sounds like you have a reason to live.
I do have a reason to live. That's none of your business.
No, I'm not trying to find out why. I mean, my first number one thing is to make sure that you live.
So get me a car and I will drive off. Honestly, you've got 45 seconds. I don't want to talk anymore.
If you're not going to give me a chance, how am I supposed to do it?
I'm giving you a chance. 45 seconds. That's plenty of a chance.
Like, to me, even get all the commanders together and get them to think about this, which they're probably not going to do anyway. I will go and talk to them. But how am I supposed to find them all, talk to them, get them to think about it in 45 seconds?
Okay, how long do you need?
All right, now, first of all, I want you to understand, I don't think they're going to do it.
Well, then I'm going to blow her head off.
That would be your choice. See, now, so the other thing, too, is hostage negotiators are successful 93% of the time, which is one of the things that I learned in the business, which means 7% of the time they just ain't coming out. Now, we have to do everything we can possibly do in the meantime, but our number one goal is not putting any additional people at risk. Like, I get this question all the time. Like, if you think it's going to save a hostage, why don't you just give them a car and save those hostages? Well, I can't put additional people at risk. And by the way, while we were doing that, I don't know anybody put a clock on us, but we went more than 45 seconds.
It's true.
And what were you thinking as we were going through it?
There was all the questions were provoking me into all the questions you asked me felt like they were dragging me away from my objective in a quite a tactical way. So I was thinking, this is annoying. He's making me talk and I don't want to talk. That's kind of what I was thinking. And then, yeah, I mean, the questions you asked were making me ponder and they were making me abandon my focus, which was to just get this car and kill this woman.
Right. See, which was, I wasn't asking you that stuff to get you to answer. What I was really doing was do exactly what you talked about, get you to ponder, get you to think. You know, what Kahneman has talked about in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, pondering, he would call slow thinking, in-depth thinking, where you really think about stuff. And then you really make the decision. And you really make up your mind instead of me trying to hustle you. Like, I could hustle you into something really quick, but it wouldn't be your decision. And the whole point of getting somebody to ponder something is so that when they do come to a decision, they own it.
When you said the thing about even if I wanted to do that, like I couldn't do that in 45 seconds or whatever, I liked that sentence because obviously there was a degree of empathy there. So even if I wanted to, it wasn't, shitting on my parade. It wasn't attacking me too much. And you made me ponder the reality of the fact that it's not even possible. My demand is not even possible, even if you were on my side. So that was a very good question to make me ponder myself, to realize that what I'm asking for is not going to happen.
See, there's another reason why I said it like that too. Because, a lot of people, if you ask for something in a business deal that they're not going to give you, they'll give you the classic American lie, I'll try. And maybe it's not an American lie, maybe it's a lie in the English language. Like, but in any kind of deal, if somebody looks at you and says, I'll try, you don't get a good feeling.
No.
And you get I'll try enough times, right away it ain't never happening.
Yeah.
So I didn't do I'll try. I basically said, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'll check. Because I'm trying to shift us out of an adversarial into a collaborative conversation. And so then what I'm basically saying is, like, I don't want to mislead you. I don't think this is going to happen. I will be your advocate.
How important is that collaboration?
No relationship survives long-term without collaboration. Just ain't going to happen.
So you're giving me the impression that you're actually on my side to some degree and that we're collaborating to find an outcome together.
Yeah, and in point of fact, see, the crazy thing is hostage negotiators have repeat customers. If I get you out alive, the chances of you straightening out your life are not great. And the chances of you ending up in another hostage siege are high if you don't get killed otherwise. And you got to have a memory of the last hostage negotiator trying to work with you versus the guy hustled you and lied to you, guy or gal. So if you always look at all interactions as if you're going to have to pay for everything you said eventually, which means if you lie, you're going to pay for it. If you did everything you could to be collaborative, then your counterpart's going to remember that in the future. Like, well, it didn't go my way, but at least the guy didn't lie to me.
It's like karma, isn't it?
It's karma. 1,000% it's karma. I'm a big believer in karma, very much.
I had a few words to say about one of my sponsors on this podcast. As the seasons have begun to change, so has my diet. And right now, I'm just going to be completely honest with you, I'm starting to think a lot about slimming down a little bit because over the last couple of probably the last 4 or 5 months, my diet has been pretty bad. And it started to show a little bit. Really, over the last 2 months, I go to the gym about 80% of the time. So I track it with 10 of my friends in a WhatsApp group in this tracker online that we all use together. We call it Fitness Blockchain. And I'm currently at 81%. So 81% of the days I've done a workout in the last 150 days, right? So I'm going to the gym about 6 times a week. That's been a little bit impacted by the Diary of a CEO live tour, but I'm trying to stick to it. And so one of the things I'm doing now to reduce my calorie intake and trying to get back to being nutritionally complete in all I eat is I'm having the Huel protein shake. Thank you, Huel, for making a product that I actually like. The salted caramel is my favorite. I've got the banana one here, which is the one my girlfriend likes, but for me, salted caramel is the one. How important is it generally in negotiations to listen? Because a lot of people, kind of think they can overpower someone with just talking at them.
Right. Yeah, and what they're called is they can't hold a job.
Yeah.
You and there are a lot of people that are very visible that are doing that, and in the moment they might look very good, but what ends up happening is they're frequently initially extremely successful, and then their success rates drop off a cliff. And then they don't hold a job because they were awesome in their first quarter and had a continuing steady decline in their productivity till it went to zero, and they can't be tolerated anymore. But everybody sees a really loud guy or gal getting deals, and they're the ones that make the most noise about it. So your original question is, how is important is listening? There is no negotiation methodology that doesn't list listening as an advanced skill. No matter what school of thought somebody's in negotiation, they all list listening as advanced. Far more difficult than simply keeping quiet. It's critical. And you will actually end up increasing the velocity of your deal cycles by listening, which a lot of people think it's really counterintuitive. But, I did an interview with Mark Cuban 6 or 7 months ago, and I talked about listening. And he's like, yeah, if I take the time to really hear somebody out in our first deal and pay attention to what's important with them, then every deal after that will come to me faster, having done it right up front. And it'll increase the velocity of my ability to make deals with them because they'll trust me. They'll know that I hear them out. They know that I'm looking out for them. And consequently, it doesn't take me a long time to establish trust. And we come to the table, we get right down to it. And it really increases the velocity of my ability to make deals. And a lot of people can't see that because I got to hear them out. I got to, blah, blah, blah. I got to find out what their point of view is. It seems highly efficient. But what it is incredibly efficient long term.
And then as it relates to speaking, when you were talking to me then in our little dummy negotiation, I noticed the tone of voice you took was very, very calm. You list in the book 3 different voices available to negotiators.
Right.
Give me a flavor of those 3 voices that are available to negotiators.
Well, there's 3 natural types in humans: fight, flight, or make friends. And these are our caveman ancestors that lived, either fought the saber-toothed tiger, ran from the saber-toothed tiger, or figured out a way to make friends with it. And the indecisive caveman got eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, doesn't have any descendants. And we've got substantive reason to believe that exists globally, regardless of gender, ethnicity, religion. The 3 types, the globe's split pretty evenly into thirds. Got a lot of data on it. Backs it up. Our brothers and sisters at Harvard pretty much agree based on their experience. Wharton has pulled a lot of the same data, comes very, very close to the same. And each type has a voice, and the voice of the assertive, natural-born assertive, which I'm actually a natural-born assertive, is more the Donald Trump style negotiator, attacking, blunt, direct, Ivanka Trump once described her dad, Donald, and said, he's not blunt, he's just direct. Well, he's just an example. But, what I think is direct, you feel like you got hit in the face with a brick, which is always counterproductive long-term. Always, always, always long-term counterproductive. Inhibits your ability to make deals. People get tired of getting hit in the face with a brick. So it wears them out. Then there's the very analytical type, which was, that soothing, calming voice that I was using. Triggers a neurochemical response in you. It actually calms you down neurochemically. It's an involuntary automatic response. Now, you can fight it. You can fight your way back out of it. But you can't stop me from getting the calming neurochemicals started in your head. And, if you're careful not to seem either cold or condescending, that tone of voice is what the great TV interviewers use, the great news anchors, because there's confidence and calm simultaneously, and people really like it. And then there's a smiling voice, a friendly voice, and somebody just smiles when they speak. That triggers a different neurochemical reaction. The people that you automatically like right away, as soon as you lay eyes on them, as soon as they start speaking. And there's an advantage to that. So I was using, in an emotional situation, and if you're in an emotional negotiation, you want to go with the soothing voice and smile, sprinkle that in, and now you get the combination of both of them, and it's collaboration. You're going to want to collaborate with me if I use that voice.
I guess it's an attempt, and as you say, to like pacify them. The other thing that in chapter 3 of your book you talk about is.
By the way, you got a pretty good voice. I mean,
thank you.
You're basically downward inflecting. Your voice portrays. First of all, it's very genuine, but it portrays a guy who's actually really thinking about what he says, and he actually listens.
Oh, that's a very kind compliment. Thank you. But she's still going to die.
So something that's been highly requested from the Impact School community has been to do a role play of a hostage negotiation. Okay, so I guess I'll be. Who shall I be? Obviously, I'm going to be the person who is like holding hostage. But think of a scenario. What's the scenario that we could do that's been kind of crazy that you've actually been in? I mean, there's been a lot. But I live in Dubai, right? So maybe we could do something to do with the Middle East.
Well, I mean, the kidnapping dynamics pretty much play out the same regardless. And I know that every now and then an Emirati gets grabbed.
Okay, so I am from the UAE, and I've kidnapped 3 girls from the UK. Okay, that's the situation.
Okay.
Right? And I'm holding them hostage at my villa on the Palm. That's the situation, okay?
Okay.
And I really want to pay off my villa, and it cost me 70 million dirhams.
Okay.
So that's like, what, about 20 mil US? That's what I want in exchange for the 3 girls.
Okay.
Okay, so how do you actually get in contact with these people, by the way?
It's remarkably easy.
Really?
Because those girls are probably all carrying what?
Phones, yeah.
Cell phones. And in their cell phone address book, if you punch in the letters MOM, what do you get?
Right, yeah. Okay.
It's insanely easy.
Well, for me, MUM. But
MUM, all right. Yeah, there you go. Well, you would know that, right?
Okay.
Wow.
So then...
So you call the family.
So
Kidnappers call the family.
The kidnappers call the family because they want the cash.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so do you find, because for some reason when I was a kid, I was always really terrified of getting kidnapped. I don't know why. I just had this, I accidentally watched some like weird adult movies, I guess. Not like that type of adult movie, but just like scary adult films.
Right.
And I would always be really terrified. But do you think that in these situations, the girls who I guess I have kidnapped in this hostage negotiation, are they actually as in danger when it comes to their lives as maybe is going through their mind? Or how do you tell the real danger? How do you tell the level of danger that there actually is?
Okay, so it's all going to start with the nature of the opening demand and the nature of the contact.
Okay.
But so if you're in a kidnap business, and like any business, reputation matters. Word gets around.
Interesting.
So if your buyer doesn't have a good feeling about you delivering the merchandise, you're going to have trouble getting paid.
Wow. Okay, so let's do this then. So I am the person who's on the Palm in Dubai who's kidnapped these 3 girls, right? And so I grab one of their phones and then I phone their mum, and then from there the mum would get in contact with you.
Or, the mom's going to family's going to get in touch
with the police,
with somebody who's going to coach them.
Okay.
It's either going to depend upon who they are, the level of acumen,
Right.
whether or not they already had kidnap and ransom insurance on the girls, which if they're traveling internationally, there's a decent chance that they do. Then there's going to be a private contractor that's either going to handle the negotiations or most likely coach mom.
Wow. So the mom is actually the one on the phone doing the negotiating.
If she's coachable, can be. Absolutely.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. I didn't realize. I thought that it would often be you who would then be on the phone with the person holding the person hostage.
Well, to keep it as real as possible.
Yeah.
You want real people on the phone.
Yeah. Wow. I remember hearing the story in your book where the person was just like making these outlandish claims, and that's how you knew that they weren't actually going to follow through.
Yeah, or the nature of the demand. Like, for example, if the demand is, look, we want all the Brits out of Iraq in 72 hours, or I'm going to kill your daughters.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Even if you wanted to get all the Brits out of Iraq in 72 hours,
right,
or at all, you couldn't do it in 72 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a guaranteed failure to start with. So is what they're asking, if you were willing to comply now, could you do it?
But so here's the thing. What if they just won't budge? And that's exactly what they want, and they just won't budge. I guess that's where you come in and get them to budge.
Well, yeah, then if in their mind, well, let's play it out.
Okay. So I'll go for something more crazy than that then.
Sure.
So I'll go with what you said then. I want all the Brits out of Iraq within 72 hours. Okay. Right. So, all right. So at this point.
So you're calling a family phone.
I'm calling you.
I'm answering.
Okay. So
just say ring, 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 and I'll answer.
Ring, ring, ring.
Hello?
Hey, I have your daughter and 2 friends, and I want all the Brits out of Iraq within 72 hours, or I'm going to kill them all.
If I could do that, what would you want? I mean, what do you want from me other than that?
I want all the Brits out of Iraq within 72 hours.
Okay. First of all, how do I know you have the girls?
I can put them on the phone right now.
Okay.
So then they probably don't. At that point, do they usually pass the phone or not?
No, they don't want to put them on the phone. That's the last thing they want to do.
Oh, okay, so I screwed up as I'm a really bad kidnapper, I guess.
Even though it's the last thing they want to do, the reason you started to comply was because you said to yourself, that's actually a legitimate question.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly. I already complied. Okay, yeah.
And that's the key to any negotiation is no matter what the other side is saying, you're always entitled to ask legitimate questions.
Okay, I've got
it. As long as it's actually a legitimate question.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big pivots we made as a result of the Burnham case. Was we discovered that's actually a legitimate question. So no matter who you are on the other side, and this, I know it's going to sound odd, and I don't mean this as negative, but unless you actually have something wrong with you, like if you're actually delusional, or if you're actually having hallucinations, which means there's something fundamentally wrong with your wiring, for lack of a better term. And there isn't anything fundamentally wrong with kidnappers' wiring, because if there was something fundamentally wrong with their wiring, they wouldn't be able to execute the kidnapping in the first place, because it requires planning and organization, which you can't do if there's something actually wrong with you. And it could be, you could have, for example, schizophrenia. That's when there's something fundamentally wrong with your wiring. Now, because you actually do have a voice in your head, and I actually don't know what that voice is saying. And there are certain drug addictions that people have found out after the fact, they develop the same sorts of problems, like methamphetamine, I understand, former meth users. It actually damages their brain. And even when they've been clean and sober for a number of years, they have a tendency to develop schizophrenic behavior. And we found that out the hard way. So otherwise, if there's only a chemical imbalance, which if somebody's not acting, quote, normally, or they're dysfunctional, it's just a chemical imbalance, all the rules still apply. So if I ask you a legitimate question, you're going to go like, that's actually a legitimate question. And that's how I begin to gain the upper hand.
That's huge, yeah, because I didn't even think twice about anything else that I wanted to say, because it was a legitimate question with a legitimate and logical answer. And so, okay, let's go back to this then. So I say, I already said it, so I guess I'll have to keep going down that route. You
could put them on a phone.
Okay.
It wouldn't be, that's how you get hostage. That's really the only way to get a hostage on the phone.
So in my head, I probably wouldn't do it yet, though. I'd probably. So you said to me, okay, you get them on the phone. So then I'll be like, and if I get them on the phone, are you going to?
Okay, let's say I just spoke to one of them.
Okay, you just spoke to one of them, fine.
You just took the phone back.
Okay, so now that you know that I have the girls, can you get all the Brits out of Iraq within 72 hours?
All right. First of all, it's going to be hard. I don't know if you've thought about how hard that would be.
I don't care how hard it is, because if I don't get all the Brits out of Iraq, I will kill the 3 girls within 72 hours.
If I could, how do I know you won't anyway?
Well, I just want all the Brits out. That's all I want. And I can make sure that I get these girls out to you as soon as all the Brits are out of Iraq.
How are you going to do that?
Well, I can have a car come pick them up. I can have you flown out. I have a jet, so I can get you flown out here to Dubai, and I can have you come pick them up right from my place.
Do you have a jet?
Of course.
And it's safe? What do I know about the jet? How do I know that's safe?
Yeah, I can see how you feel that, but here's the thing. If you guys don't start acting on this quickly, then I will start torturing the girls even before you start working on getting people out of Iraq.
Sounds like you want to do something that's going to make it even harder for me to accomplish a goal.
It's so crazy how the tonality on your side is so powerful, because I've never really realized how powerful tonality is until this. It's huge. Maybe as well because it puts so much pressure on you as the person who is trying to negotiate with you as the hostage negotiator. That tonality.
So I think I'm a terrible negotiator. So let's start with that.
All
We
right.
will definitely today cover some of the principles of that. But what I really want to talk about is in the book, when you're talking about some of the scenarios that you were in where people, it's a life and death situation
Right.
and you're the line of defense. How do you deal with that emotionally? Like that's my job feels high stress, but that's no one's life is on the line. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. I mean, first of all, you just don't know any better.
Maybe when you first started, but not long term.
Training in the FBI, they started out really good. I mean, they hit you, with the Tyson line. Everybody has a plan until they get punched. Like the second day of the negotiation training in the FBI, they hit you square between the eyes with something really hard.
Like a real story or something made up?
They spend the first day laying out a philosophy, which, if you understand the nuances of the words, I still completely agree with. A hostage has never been killed on deadline in the United States, ever. And so, like, you get kind of comfortable and you got a sense that negotiation's pretty successful overall. I mean, in reality, it's about a 93% success rate.
Whoa.
And then the very next day, they present a scenario where it looks like a hostage got murdered right on deadline, right in front of everybody. And you just you were hit in the head.
Can I
with a
use the words you
baseball
use in the
bat.
book? Because this was when I realized I don't want your job, or the one that you had back then. You said she was shot twice in the back with a shotgun.
Right.
It almost cut her in half
Yeah.
as she flew through the glass window.
Yeah,
And I thought, God damn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'd find a way, but Chris, I don't know how I'd come back from that. Like that would
That'd be
damage me
hard.
in ways that I can't imagine.
Well, that ends up kind of getting into a secondary characteristic, because then when I was running a program, I went out of my way to look for negotiators that had been involved in a siege where somebody got killed, and they bounced back. Typically with a success rate that's that high, if anytime you're under less than double digits of a job, sieges, whatever you want to call them, probably everything you touch is going to turn out good, and you're going to get a little overconfident. And then once you start climbing past double digits, I mean, odds are starting to run against you. And what happens with pretty much every time is the negotiator will be like, I didn't get into this to watch people die. I'm going to find another thing to do. Or they're going to say, I'm never going to let this happen again. And those people will double down, and they'll be more courageous in speaking truth to command, whether it be an ambassador or an on-scene commander, and basically saying like, no, we can't do it like this. I
Were
don't
you
care what
ever
you think, but
involved
we
in an
can't do
operation
this.
where somebody got killed?
Yeah.
So did you need to put yourself back together, or do you not react like that? Let's start with that question.
I've been repeating one phrase in my head for a long time leading up to that I didn't really realize what it meant. My old boss, Gary Nessner, used to always teach us best chance of success. What we're doing is the best chance of success. And so then when the Burnham-Sabero case in the Philippines, a lot of people got killed. And
Can you
finally,
give us a quick breakdown? What happened?
Gracia and Martin Burnham and another American citizen named Guillermo Sabero got scooped up in a dive resort in the Philippines, in a region of the Philippines everybody thought was completely safe. Now, the bad guys, the Abu Sayyaf, were looking for Westerners. There'd been a siege earlier in the same year in another part of the Philippines where they looking for Americans and Westerners. They got nothing but Western Europeans. And he ultimately, that case was a train wreck, which I was not involved in because there were no Americans there. And the bad guys ended up scoring about $20 million as a result.
Oh.
Which made a rival gang jealous of the score. So they go out and they do an even more daring raid. They cross like 400 miles of open ocean on these lousy little boats, scooped everybody up in a dive resort, and ended up getting 3 Americans and a bunch of Filipinos. Sabero ends up getting murdered by the terrorists about 3-ish weeks in, 21-ish days.
How does the siege go on for that long?
Oh, this thing lasted 13 months. So
Oof.
yeah, that was just the beginning. That wasn't even the opening act. So
And did they kill them to make a point, to just prove like we're serious?
well, they were Western American arrogance, if you will. When Sabero finally got killed early on, there had been Filipinos. The bad guys were killing the Filipinos regularly, like it was no big deal. And I can remember at that point in time when we tried to stir up a little outrage over it, I thought, we have sat here and not really said much at all. Well, these Filipinos are getting beheaded. Now all of a sudden we want everybody to be bent out of shape. And I remember thinking, like, if I was a host country, my reaction would be like, oh, now it's important to you? So, but the group that was doing it at the time, I mean, they did all the bad things that terrorist murderers do. I mean, all of them.
One, was that the first time that you were on a call where somebody got killed?
It was the first kidnapping that I was directly involved in where people were getting killed, yes.
All right, so when the first body shows up, are you the one talking to them?
No, we coached.
Okay.
One of the reasons why, what I'm doing now is applicable. The Black Swan method is based on hostage negotiation, which is universal. Human nature. Everybody's human. So I could show up in any country. I mean, literally any country, any culture, Philippines, Nigeria, Cape Town, Baghdad. All I need to do is find somebody that's coachable, and that person probably knows the market, if you will, and I understand the human wiring. So we put together their knowledge of the market in very general terms, and my knowledge of how to get people to engage, and then we can negotiate anywhere.
When the first body comes out, what happens to you? It's the first time that this has gone awry. We're in the 7% now that don't go well. For me, when I think about the way that would like impact my mind and force me to like regroup, did it knock you off, or are you just laser focused?
Well, you got to keep rolling because the case was still ongoing. And
so no time for emotions right now. Is that what you're telling yourself?
Yeah, kind of, probably. You got no choice. The case is still going on. You got a team. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team.
You can always run screaming from the building. But really, and this is where life gets interesting for me, is that by nature, I would say I'm a run screaming from the building person, but I had to flip it all because I don't respect that. And in discovering that you don't respect your initial impulse becomes a fascinating journey if you're willing to walk it. So I'm always curious if other people are having to do what I have to do to keep myself centered in there, or if it's just like, it didn't occur to me to run screaming from the building.
Well, when you're in the midst of, when you're in the battle, I mean, you can't bail. I mean, people are looking at you to lead. There are other people's lives that are still on the line.
So that's your identity.
Pick yourself up.
You wouldn't allow yourself to do that.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. We're back in the Philippines. The first body just gets dropped off. You obviously decide that you're going to get stronger. You don't want it to happen again. How do you, are you just really good at recentering yourself emotionally? Or is it a meditative practice? Like when the body hits, I know what that would be like for me. That rush of blood to my head where my ears almost feel like they're closing in. You can hear your heartbeat beating in your ears. Did that happen and you had to calm yourself down? Or does that just not happen and you're just so laser focused?
Well, it was principally because we were still in the midst of the siege. There were still two Americans whose lives were at stake. And up to that point in time, the intergovernmental organization was probably at its worst. Like we had previously gotten through a case and everybody had gotten away with kind of half cooperating, and the bodies hadn't been, the case we just finished just a couple of months earlier, like nobody got killed. And it's a little bit like success. You win, football analogy, again, it's tough for a football team to repeat after they won the Super Bowl because people are a little more focused on their own success versus team success once they reach the pinnacle. So the cooperation in the early part of the second case was horrible. I mean horrible, because they'd gotten away with it previously, and there was no body count. But now there was people were dying. So we really had to. We got our arms more around the case. We pushed a little harder on cooperation. People got a little more serious about not cooperating, which in the long run, 12 months later, was when the final round, 2 out of 3 remaining Americans got killed in a botched rescue attempt. And the case had gotten really ugly again at that point. Now, that one hit me harder than the first one, because in the first one, nobody had been cooperating with us. So I felt less responsible for the outcome, because the government of the Philippines was playing games with us. You know, they felt out of control on the last case. So they gave us a guy who was supposed to handle the negotiations that was just completely going missing in action on a regular basis when he was supposed to be with us. I mean, and they pulled him right after the first series of deaths. They were like, all right, this ain't working out so good. So I felt, we still had the case going, and I hadn't got my arms wrapped around it that well. Now, 12 months later, I'd had my arms wrapped around it, and then when Martin Burnham, when the word came in that he got killed, that hit me. That was a real. I'll never forget that moment. I was at home in the U.S. when I got the call that he'd been killed. That, for me at the time, was difficult. Worst moment of my professional career. One of my worst personal moments, until I'm listening to a case a couple years later, listening to a negotiator talk about how hard it was on him when a baby had gotten killed in a siege.
Oh, God.
And I remember thinking at the time, and it was a guy I had a tremendous amount of respect for. I thought, hard on you? That wasn't your relative. And then when I thought about that, I thought, and how am I, feeling sorry for myself over Martin Burnham's death, because he wasn't my father. He wasn't, my spouse. He wasn't my brother. I got no right feeling bad about this, or at least to the extent that his family members do. So that, that was a bit of, the overall journey, that putting things in perspective. Like, you asked to be in the middle of this stuff. It's a volunteer job. You're going to feel sorry for yourself when you volunteered. That's probably out of perspective.
Why did you volunteer?
I found myself, I was in crisis response. I was a member of the FBI SWAT team, and I had re-injured my knee, and I wanted to stay in crisis response. I liked crisis response. People got to make up their mind. You can't go, well, let's sleep on this. Let's give us 24 hours to think about it. You can't do that. You got to make a decision. And I've always been in favor of decision making. So I'd been a SWAT guy, and we had hostage negotiators, and it was a little bit like what we were talking about earlier. Some stuff is a lot harder than it looks from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
And I literally remember thinking to myself, I talk to people every day. I could talk to terrorists. How hard could it be? My son and I joked that the Voss family motto is, how hard could it be? Which is a little bit like, it's a little bit like the rednecks' famous last words, hey, watch this.
Yeah, hold my beer.
Hold my beer. So, but then I got into it, and I've been volunteering. When I finally got trained, I got volunteered on a suicide hotline. And then when I'm in it, I'm like, I'm around these extraordinary people that are doing phenomenal things with words. With words. Not actual actions, just words, making a huge difference, and being in the middle of these sieges and making a difference simply by what they said. And I thought, I could get into this. This could be good. And it was.
And so how does that journey begin of learning what to say? Like, what are the sort of magic words? Like, take us back to the Philippines. The bodies start coming out. How do you talk somebody down like that? Like, it just seems like all hope is lost once they kill the first person. There's no backing out.
Yeah, man, they still got more people that are at stake. And so you can't not communicate. And, it's kind of like any other negotiation where the other side is doing stuff that is just not in their interest, but they're absolutely convinced that they're right. I mean, these guys want to get paid. And negotiation is not what it is to you, it's what it is to the other side. You get all bent out of shape that it's a horrific, horrible thing.
That was something I heard you say, I think in an interview.
Yeah.
So there is no such thing as logical. There's
Right.
only what matters to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that is so true. You literally just cut through decades worth of economics textbooks that try to make people seem rational with that one sentence. That the second I heard you say that, I was like, oh my God, that is absolutely true. There is no such thing as logical. There's only what matters to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is that like when you come into a situation like that, are you just asking yourself what matters to this person?
Yeah.
Is that the most fundamental
bigger-
question? What matters?
Well, then what matters, and then ultimately people make up their mind principally on what they perceive the loss to be. And that's human nature. Doesn't matter the scenario.
When you say the loss that led them to do this, or what losing in that scenario would look like?
Got to look at both. Loss that drove them to the table in the first place to take the action, and then what loss are they avoiding by the action? And you want to get in their head and find out what it is. And since what loss are they avoiding is all perception, vision of the future, then depending upon how you got in their head, if you're in there by invitation, which is the whole point of empathy or the tactical application of empathy, to get in by invitation. Since you're in there by invitation, then the idea is to get them to look at another loss. So if it's a kidnapping, it's a question that's seems as merciless as how are you going to get paid if you kill people? How are we gonna collaborate? How much are you losing by getting rid of hostages when you could have gotten paid for them? Because somebody's going to scare up the money for the hostage.
Right.
Somebody's going to. A hostage negotiator's real job internationally is to make sure that if somebody scares up that money, that there's enough of a trail left that you can hunt them down afterwards. It's exactly why you give a bank teller bait money. You don't want the bank teller to get shot over money. Now, you also don't want the bank robber to leave the bank with the entire contents of the vault. You give him enough money so the bank teller doesn't get shot, the bad guy leaves, and you chase him down afterwards. That's the way to save lives and put the bad guys out of business. So you want to get them focused back on the money again. And then if they kill more hostages, it's their loss. And that's when they start to think like, all right, well, maybe we made our point. Let them feel that way. Who cares how they feel as long as you get what you want? And that's the idea to try to re-engineer the outcome.
Steve, what other high points do we need to hear? I mean, Danielle's been very generous so far, and I love what she said. I mean, it's really encapsulated what I was hoping we could get across and helping people understand. It's about everybody getting better. A positive sum game.
I think what's fascinating, and Danielle can speak to this, is the journey itself. In the beginning, like one of the points in the beginning that you brought up, big challenge, not going on a listing appointment without a commitment that they're going to list, which is unheard of in real estate, because every seller expects the agent will come out to the house, look at the house, give their whole presentation, and then let them decide what they want to do. And one of the things you brought up is not going out to the house without a commitment that they're going to list. And so in the beginning, when that was a big hill to climb in the beginning, and there were some real rough spots, because when you got to be terrible in order to be good. If you're not willing to be terrible, you're not going to get great at anything. And so she had to be willing to do things that she had never done before. And, that's not an easy conversation. What do you mean you don't want to come out to the house? What are you talking about?
Everybody else is. How can you not?
Right. And another thing that you brought up, when someone refuses to be a victim, that can bring out predator behavior. And Danielle started running into that. And when you don't know where that's coming from in the beginning, right? You don't have a frame of reference, and someone beginning to attack you, that doesn't feel any good. And she's checking herself. Is it me? Is it my tone? Is it what I'm saying? Why am I getting that reaction? And so, and Danielle can get into it more. So in the beginning, like, that was a big mountain to climb. And now it's about, how can I get the call down to 10 minutes or less? How can I determine whether I'm the fool or the favorite? I don't care which one I am. How can I determine within 10 minutes? It started out with, 40 minutes, then 30 minutes.
Hour and a half.
The Zoom call, and now it's like, the conversation is, how can we just find out now, fool or favorite, and be done with it? But this has been over a 3-4 year period of time of trial and error and trial and error. And, one of the things that I think I said to Danielle up front that really helped her, and I use the analogy with Tiger Woods. When Tiger Woods won his first Masters tournament by 14 strokes, young kid, early 20s, beat the world of best golfers by 1 million. He went to his golf coach and said, I don't like my swing. I'm winning, but I'm not in love with my swing, and decided to retool his whole swing. And it took him 1 year. Now, this is Tiger Woods. This is a guy practicing every day. Took him 1 year to hit the ball once the way he had envisioned he wanted his swing to be. And then it took him another 6 months to groove in that swing. Well, in that 18-month period of time, he didn't win any golf tournaments. And the press was on him, and everyone was on him. Tiger Woods, flash in the pan. What happened to Tiger? After he got that new swing grooved in, he won 10, I believe, 10 of the next 14 tournaments. And I shared that with Danielle, that you may take a dip in performance in order to experience a real spurt in growth. And that, you can comment, Danielle, I think that allowed her to relax into this space of, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And no more, I'd be okay with no more blood money and no more, and a potential dip in performance in order to come out on the other side with something I would be really excited about. It has been an insane journey. I've been hung up on and yelled at, and everything you can think of. Did we lose you guys?
No, I'm still here. I'm sitting there with my mouth open in admiration.
But because here's what I'm up against, is when I'm a top agent in my geographic area, and I have strong digital marketing skills, and I've really embraced social proof through online reviews from going a long time back, pre-Yelp days. And so I get a lot of calls from the internet, and sometimes they're my people and they've become wonderful clients. But a lot of times they have someone in mind, and often that person has less experience, and often they don't do as good of a marketing job. And for what, they don't have the same track record. And so the people are, wanting to double check that. And so they want to do their due diligence. And so the obvious choice to do that with are the experts that you can find online that in any, any field, but specifically for real estate agents. And so I get a lot of those calls. And at the end of the day, they end up wanting to go with the person who has less experience and less negotiation ability, less marketing prowess because of the relationship, because of some sort of connection or something that they have with them that makes them feel comfortable with them, that they were comfortable from the beginning, and they're just double checking. And so now I'm at this point where what I want to do is actually tell people that. And that's where I'm playing with now, is just saying, here's what we're looking at. Like, here's what often happens, and see if I can just get to the truth. Because if that's what you want, I'm happy to answer your questions for a few minutes and give you that second opinion you need. But it's kind of like a doctor or a lawyer. When you go get a second opinion, like, you'll get 15 minutes of someone's time potentially for free. But then that's it. You have to hire me to get the full strategy and the full technique. And that's where I'm prioritizing my time, is for the people who are hiring me so that they can get that expert. That, I don't know, that kind of, we were rambling, but.
No, that was cool. I mean, you had so many cool things there, which is exactly what, when people get to the level where you're at, we got a new phrase, construct that we're thinking about now called shu, ha, and re, which is martial arts vernacular. When you're in shu, you're a beginner. Just do what the master says. Do what Steve tells you to do. Say it the way Steve tells you to say it, word for word. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
And then you start to get your repetitions in a little bit. And maybe there be a chaotic period of time where you feel very unsure, you feel awkward. Maybe you're getting weird responses. Maybe you're getting hung up on. Maybe you're getting yelled at. But then when you get into ha, you're beginning, the middle range, you're beginning to develop your own rhythm. You're beginning to see what other, quote, masters say and the elements of what they say and how that fits into your thinking now. And you're seeing stuff coming at you. And then in re, the expert level, and by the way, all these skills are perishable. I mean, like golf, you don't keep playing, you're going to fall back down off the mountain.
So true.
In re, you're making up your own rules and you're trying new things and you're probably advancing the thinking. And that's exactly where you are now by saying, like, if I know this is going on and I know how to tell people honestly with integrity without hurting their feelings, let me see what happens if I just tell them, look, I know you're looking for due diligence. I know you got a favorite. You're a human being, so no matter what the fact, logic, and reason says, you're still going to make a bad decision, which is go with your favorite instead of me. But let me give you a taste of what a top agent can really do for you if you ever change your mind. Which then, the last impression is a lasting impression. You're going to convert them down the line because you're a top agent for good reason. They're going with someone with lesser skills and abilities than you, which means that's a one and done deal for them. But you've left a great last impression on them in a very short period of time, which if they're ever going to come around, that's the highest percentage chance of them coming around.
What are some known knowns when you roll up, on average, the sort of 80, 85% range? When you roll up, okay, mom, probably going to be a button. They want to be in control. They want to be heard. Are there any others?
Sense of loss. An idea of some sort of a loss. Loss is the strongest behavior trigger of human nature, period.
How do you track that down?
Well, first of all, it's like you know what you're looking for to begin with. It's not really active listening, it's proactive listening. And there's certain things, or the tactical application of empathy. What do we know to be true? What do we got to bet on? Loss is the biggest impact on decision-making of human beings across the board. Danny Kahneman, 2002, Nobel Prize winner, behavioral economics, lost things twice as much as an equivalent gain. for people, period. If you're human, you're wired that way, which makes it the biggest trigger in thinking. So if they're engaged in a behavior that we don't understand, they perceive the loss, and we got to start, sniffing around for it, looking for the hints, knowing it's there. And then consequently, you got to get them to change their mind about something. You reformulate the loss. If I say to you, if you do this, there's a 90% chance you'll fail. You're like, I'm not doing that. But if I say, do this, there's, you got a 10% chance of success. Ooh, that sounds and lands completely different. 10%, I could succeed. 10%, I'm a winner. I'm in the 10%. It lands differently. But if you want to make sure they don't do it, 90% chance you'll fail here. I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that risk. That's too far against me. I mean, that will shut somebody down for sure. 10% success might move them forward, but I guarantee you I shut you down with a 90% failure rate. There is no difference in those numbers. Exact same numbers. And so you start to see it across the board and like, all right, so we're going to get them to change their mind. We just change the frame of the loss. You're in a merger and an acquisition negotiation. Entrepreneur, sole proprietor is trying to sell his company. Wants to get, 10x EBITDA because a buddy of his got 10x. Now, the person buying his company wants him to take a lower multiple so that in 2 years he retains a piece and he makes 30, 40, 50, $100 million more by taking less now. Guy's thinking his loss. I can't take $1 million less for this. I can't take 9 when I should take 10. I'll lose $1 million. Take 9, take a piece. You're willing to risk $100 million 7 years from now? You want to lose $100 million over $1 million now? And they'll be like, no, that's crazy. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. You just reframed what the loss is. And that's where you get people to change their mind, because whether it's a terrorist thinking we have we've been harmed in the past. We've lost our homeland. We've lost our identity. Terrorism is about choosing violence as a way to make up for loss.
Interesting. I have never heard that before. Is that universal?
It's the universal driver of human decision making. Now, how they're looking at the loss, there's kind of 3 groups that are out there that you see over and over again. Lethal triad, they called it the charismatic leader, the sociopathic middlemen, the number 2s, captains, lieutenants, and then the inadequate followers. It was a terrorism book from way back when called Crusaders, Criminals, and Crazies. A friend of mine, Tom Strentz, wrote a book called The Bad, the Mad, and the Sad. So it kind of breaks down into, the complete charismatic leader. Maybe he believes in a cause, maybe just believes in himself. The criminals are involved. They're just doing it because it's a way to combat the status quo and continue to commit crime. The people that are looking for identity, it's harsh to describe them as the inadequate followers, but the sad, they're looking for an identity. And the leadership has convinced them that they've been harmed by this perceived loss and they have to make up for it. So it's kind of packaged along those lines.
And is that who's going to be there actually doing the hostage part? So you're not dealing with the charismatic leader, you're dealing with the sad underlings?
Principally, the sad underlings are their implementers because they're the cannon fodder for the leader. The leadership, whether it's a charismatic leader or a sociopathic enabler, who are they going to put at risk? Who are you going to send out to conduct the kidnapping? Who's going to hold the hostage? Who's going to be the hostage's jailer? That's the worst job on their side, to have to sit around with a hostage day after day. It's you're not giving that to your talented people.
How did these guys, 13 months?
Yeah.
How did they not just get bored and want it to end?
They're prepared for a little longer siege. they've got a vision of a big payoff in the end. That $20 million payout the year previous painted visions of wealth, which means if they don't get their 20 million, they're losing. So you'll stay in the game longer because of this perceived loss.
And
the
are you
vision of
guys
riches.
letting food get in, or have they stocked up enough food to get through all this?
Well, we're trying to get stuff in. Didn't know this was going on at the time, but Dan Bowden, the author of Black Hawk Down, wrote an article in Vanity Fair probably about a year after this case went down, revealing a whole bunch of information that I was not privy to in the case. So according to Dan Bowden, who evidently has great resources in the U.S. government, not in the FBI, there were unnamed government agencies that were sending in food deliveries with informants that had tracking devices in them.
Oh.
That, again, according to Dan Bowden in his article in Vanity Fair, I am quoting a publicly source. I am not quoting, secret government information, that there were food deliveries that were being made with trackers on them.
Okay, so that starts getting complicated with all kinds of different agencies pulling in different directions.
Right.
What is all this like? Seeing people beheaded, recognizing the sad, the
Mad,
mad,
and sad.
Yeah, like
Nice rhyme there, huh? Thank you, Tom Strantz.
I'll try to remember it better. But what is all of this revealing to you, like, about humanity? Do you have a look at humanity like this is crazy, that this is ugly? Are you optimistic? Like, I mean, you've seen some gnarly shit. Like, what does this give you a takeaway? Because you said I could drop you anywhere, and you know enough about human wiring,
right,
to go into this.
Yeah.
And it does not paint a pretty picture with the ways in which we are manipulatable. Between this is all about loss and just reframing the loss, completely reframe, like the fact that we would do this kind of crazy shit over loss.
Did you ever wonder what are the emotional intelligence secrets that FBI hostage negotiators use to get their way, and whether or not they would do you any good in your business or personal negotiations? So after all, if there's a bank robbery with hostages, which I have negotiated, and there's 4 hostages, does the hostage negotiator says, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we meet in the middle and we'll call it a day? You really can't compromise when you're a hostage negotiator, and that's the way that I learn negotiation. So I'll take you through a little bit of how I got to learn it and how I began to apply it in my business and professional life. And it really started on a night in late winter in New York City, well after dark. I left the FBI office, 26 Federal Plaza, and fought my way through traffic to get to a suicide hotline. I was volunteering on the suicide hotline because I've been told that that was the best way to become a hostage negotiator, the best experience. And as a side note, I would tell you it's the best way to learn how to really listen to people on an emotional intelligence perspective. So I got to the hotline that night, and I picked up the phone, and I answered the phone in my hotline voice. Hello, this is Helpline. Which came to be known as the late night FM DJ voice. Which now I refer to as the late night FBI DJ voice. But the voice on the other end of the phone just blurted out. He says, I need your help, I need your help. I gotta put a lid on this day, I gotta bring a lid to this day. And I listened to him and I sensed that he was frantic. So that's exactly what I said. I said, you sound frantic. And immediately I could feel a change in his tone of voice, and his voice came down. I felt strength come into his voice. And he started to talk to me, and he began to tell me his issue was that he was battling the disease of paranoia, and he was going to go on a car trip the next day with his family. And he knew that on that car trip, because of his paranoia, he would get completely wound up and overcome with the paranoia. So since it was going to happen the next day, that night he was overcome with paranoia, thinking about the paranoia for the next day. and had completely wrapped himself up and needed to put a lid on the day. So as we began to talk, he began to tell me also about how much his family was helping him. And I used something that someone else had once said to me, and I remember how strong it was, because I was explaining to a colleague of mine how involved my family was and how supportive they were. And at that time, my colleague said to me, "It sounds like your family's really close." And when he said that to me, I remember how good it felt and how it just drew together everything that I was feeling and how I felt myself strengthened when he said that. So I said the same thing to this man on the phone. I said, "It sounds like your family's really close." And he says, "Yeah, we are." And so then he began, and he continued to talk, and he talked, and he began to tell me all the things that he was doing in order to battle the paranoia. And I was very impressed with it. He sounded like a very determined man to me. So I said to him, "You sound really determined." And he said, "You know, I am determined." He said, "You know, I'm going to go on that car trip tomorrow, and I'm going to be fine. Thanks for everything you did for me." And he hung up. Now, I said 3 things to him. Just 3 simple things. And I didn't know it at the time. And I was explaining to a friend of mine at brunch just the other day. He was telling me he used to write for Hollywood. And he said, "You know, what you're saying about what you do makes all the sense in the world. I never would have guessed what you were doing, but once you explain it, it makes all the sense in the world. It's like a great Hollywood ending. You have no idea what's coming at the end of a movie, but when it happens, it makes sense." And that's what hostage negotiators do. And we do now do in business. We take things that you all know about, but we combine them in ways that make them incredibly powerful, that no one ever sees.
With that, what do you see as the major differences between hostage negotiations that you've obviously been a part of and business negotiations? Outside the the potential of death, but what do you see as the big differences between hostage and business negotiations?
Hostage negotiations are generally calmer.
No shit, really?
Yeah, I got to tell you something. In hostage negotiation, since we learned, we didn't know it was emotional intelligence, but we learned how to dial into people faster with some neuroscience tools, emotional intelligence tools. They really tend to be, they tend to be calmer. I mean, business people have far more stories of people screaming at them, yelling at them, storming out of the room, trying to destroy negotiations than any of the hostage negotiators I ever worked with did. And that's just crazy if you think about it. But if the idea is to use really tactical emotional intelligence from the beginning, then it makes sense that ours are calmer and probably more effective overall.
And is it because my assumption here on hostage is that they might start really emotional, but then they might start really aggressive, but then through some tactical stuff you can kind of calm down and come to an agreement. Whereas business, do they keep the emotions throughout, or do they keep the hostility throughout?
Well, people get mad when they're not heard. I mean, it seems like ridiculously obvious. Mm-hmm. But very few business people go into a negotiation to hear the other side out because they're so determined to be heard. I got a case I got to make. I got a value proposition I got to give. I got an argument I have to make. I have to explain to them what my position is. And, the Stephen Covey advice from way back, seek first to understand, then be understood. This is a tactical application of that. Seek first to demonstrate understanding in order to be understood. I get my point across much quicker. I can get it into your brain if I know that the biggest obstacle to you hearing my case is you have to be heard out first. I mean, it's so stupid that it's so true. But, we'll progress faster by applying these ideas in business negotiations. We tell people we accelerate their deal-making ability. We save them massive amounts of time. And that's how. I mean, it's a counterintuitive approach.
Right. Look, Chris, you said at the beginning the devil is in the detail. And I really want people listening to this podcast to get detail from us about how they, from the minute they turn off this podcast and go and buy your book, Never Split the Difference, how from that moment they can be better negotiators? What is the best way to do that? Should we role play? Do you want to explain to us the skills that are involved in negotiating? How do you normally work this kind of thing?
Well, let the other side go first. And that's really hard to do because everybody wants to have their say. One of the things about negotiation is the art of letting the other side have your way. How do you do that? You got to let them talk. So let's say you have a promotional event of mine. You want to do a promotional event with me. You got a whole game plan laid out. And your typical negotiator, you're worried about your budget. You're worried about the details. You want to be in control. How would you start that? How would you normally start that? If you wanted to contact me about it, make the deal.
I would call you and I'd say, hey, Chris, my name's Jake. I'm based in the UK. I hear you've got a new book out, Never Split the Difference. I run a events agency in the UK and I would love the opportunity to share your story with people across the pond. How do you fancy that?
Sounds like you got something specific in mind.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah, I want to do a book tour around the UK, and I reckon we can sell out theatres. And I've got some great contacts in the TV industry, so I reckon I can get you onto BBC Breakfast and Good Morning Britain. They're the two big early morning programmes over here. What do you think?
All right, so I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to talk about what just happened.
Yeah.
Before you contacted me, whether you actually wrote it down or you're aware of it, you have an entire vision in your head. Vision drives decision. Now, there are a lot of times in negotiations where people are actually just contacting someone to get a competing bid, or they're looking to do due diligence. Like, let's say you want to do this whole book tour thing, but you want to do it with an equivalent author. There's somebody else with a business book out there, and you're dry running with me to see what I might be looking for, which means the vision in your head does not include me. So my first saying, sounds like you've got something in mind. I didn't say, what do you have in mind? Because any question puts people on guard to some degree. Now, what do you have in mind is what we would refer to as a calibrated question. A lot of other people would call either an open-ended question or a reporter's question. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Reporter's interrogatives. I ask that question if I want you to stop and think. It triggers what Danny Kahneman would refer to as in-depth, slow thinking. If in that moment I want you to stop and think and take a step back, I'll ask you a what question. If instead I want to trigger a straight stream of consciousness, sounds like you got something in mind, hit your brain in a completely different way. And it's much more likely to open up a direct, downstream, unvarnished stream of consciousness of your thoughts. Now, there's no guarantee of success of any approach. I just want to use the stuff that's most likely to get the thinking out of you without exhausting you. I want you to give me a downstream that you're comfortable with, which simultaneously makes me feel to you like I'm easy to work with.
Yeah. Well, you were kind of praising me when you said to me, seems like you've got something. I almost felt I had to tell you something because I almost felt like you were already impressed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's all this additional emotional intelligence, relationship building benefits that kind of come with this approach entirely.
So can I flip it slightly, because I'm intrigued by this approach. I want to go back to the angle Jake was talking about, but in relation to your days as a FBI negotiator, what would you do if somebody refused to play ball with you? So if somebody just refused to engage?
Well, that's part of the assessment of the process. Now, we'd probably start what we consider to be one-way dialogue, because you refusing to answer back doesn't mean you're not listening. So if you're refusing to answer me back, what does that mean? What that means is you're scared. Your guard is up. You don't know if you could trust me. The future looks extremely uncertain to you. You're frozen. So that informs me as to now I'm going to start taking educated guesses. You know, each one of these things sounds like is a label. Looks like, feels like. Those are educated guesses. You know, we have a scientific term for them. We call them swags. That's a scientific wild ass guess. I'm going to take a scientific wild ass guess on what you're feeling. So I'm negotiating. We got 27th floor of a high rise in Harlem, in New York, in the 90s. We have brought the circus to town. We got the SWAT team. We got up 27 floors in this high rise. I mean, the circus has come to town. We've made so much noise getting up there. We figure there's no way that these guys are not long gone because we brought the circus. We got elephants. We got trapeze artists. I mean, we make that much noise bringing an entire SWAT team and everybody to bear on this apartment. So I think we're talking to an empty apartment. I get 2 baby negotiators with me. They're still in training. I'm like, cool. This is rite of passage. Everybody talks to an empty apartment at some point in time. In point of fact, the fugitives are inside and they're heavily armed. And so I just say, look, I want you to know that I know you're scared. And I know you're worried about coming out. And I know you're worried about getting hurt when you're coming out. Here's what it's going to look like when you come out so that you don't get hurt. Because I said vision drives decision, right? I got to start putting a vision in their head of them coming out safely. So we're talking to this empty apartment. I'm thoroughly convinced it's empty for 6 hours. 6 hours of this over and over and over. And 6 hours in, a sniper on an adjacent building says, I just saw a curtain move inside. And we all go like, holy cow, they really are in there. And so then I go, look, you know, we just saw the curtains move on the inside. One of you just looked out the window. I've been telling you for 6 hours, we're not going away, and that you're going to come out safe. And about 5 minutes later, without saying a word, the door opens and a pair of hands comes out exactly as I've described. I said, you have to come out with your hands first so that we can see that they're empty so we don't hurt you. And you've got to move really slow because we've got to keep you safe. We brought all three of them out one at a time, exactly like that. They never said a word. When we got outside, the first one to come out was a female. And I went to talk to her. I'm like, I've been talking for 6 hours. Why don't you say something? And she says, well, we were hoping you would go away. And I said, well, if you were hoping we would go away, why'd you come out? She said, well, you said you'd never go away. So we finally believed you and decided to come out.
What? Unbelievable. You know what I think I mean, for a start, I don't know why, but I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that I'm hearing exactly what bad people in the States have heard at the sort of peak of their careers, if you know what I mean. Like, you're the voice that these huge fugitives in the United States have been listening to, and we're now on the other end of it. But what sort of gets me is so I used to work in Formula One as a broadcaster, and in motor racing they call Formula One the Piranha Club because everyone is out to get everyone else and eat each other up. And as you walk up and down the pit lane or the paddock, everyone's saying, oh, he robbed me and she robbed me and I stole from him. And that's kind of the way that world likes to operate. But what you've just explained is you can have a successful negotiation by not disarming someone, not being aggressive towards someone, by putting them totally at ease. And I've always kind of had the thought that to be a good negotiator, you need to get them on the back foot, knock them on their knees and slap them on the back of the head and leave them feeling like they've got nowhere to go. But you've just described the total opposite. It's successful.
Yeah, because long term, it's much more profitable. I mean, they're quiet negotiators, get farther, accumulate more money, are happier. There's the occasional poster child, and the current poster child for negotiations in the United States is Donald Trump. I was in New York in the 80s and the 90s. When he was there, he was making it as a real estate developer. We have a number of mutual friends. He graciously hosted a fundraiser for a charity that I was the head of in his apartment at Trump Tower. It was a very gracious and wonderful thing for him to do. With mutual acquaintance set it up. He started out in New York. He redid Grand Central Station, spectacular success. He did the Woolman skating rink that the city hadn't been able to fix for years. He finally got sick of walking by it, seeing how ugly it was on his own. Paid to fix it. He just got disgusted at the city's ineptitude. Went and built the original Trump Tower. Phenomenal. Then built another building, but then kind of stopped putting up buildings in New York. And then he went to Atlantic City and had a spectacular success there. But then, sort of ran out of gas in Atlantic City, and an aggressive negotiator wears out their counterparts. Now, the monuments to their success remain, but the monuments are built farther and farther apart in time. And since the monuments to their success remain, people forget how long ago they were built. And the victories are fewer and fewer in between. And people just get tired of getting beat up, and they just stop coming to the table. They don't want, if coming to the table means arguing, they don't come to the table.
So would you argue then, Chris, that negative emotions such as negotiating through fear or intimidation or telling people about your power or status and things like that are short-term fixes, but actually over a long term they're destructive?
1,000%. And one of the things that's almost misleading about that is, academic studies on negotiation. What you're talking about is referred to in academic terms as strategic umbrage. Do I get mad to get the deal? And there's an academic study, there's probably several out there that say that strategic umbrage works. Anytime you find out about any study, take a look about how they gathered it and whether or not you like how they did the data. You don't got to be a college graduate to look at it and say, this doesn't look right to me. So the academic studies on strategic umbrage were simulations that were run with students. I ran simulations with students myself. What happens when you run a simulation with a student? They sit down and they think two things. I got to get this done in 45 minutes because I want to go drink it with my buddies tonight, or I want to go get coffee, or I got to study something else. But they tend to allocate 45 minutes. They also feel the only way they fail is if they don't get a deal. And since it's a simulation, this is a one and done, and it's not an ongoing relationship. So they're within 10 minutes, they've been there 40 minutes, they've been there 45. And finally, one of them decides to get angry with the other one. And the other one's like, all right, to hell with it. And they cut the deal. And that data will show that the anger got the deal. But they're never going to deal with each other again. And it was a fake simulation, and they don't have to pay for that anger. And there isn't anybody in our life we don't have repeat relationships with. You go out and buy a car and you slaughter the dealer over the car price. If the car's a lemon, you go back to that dealer and they're not going to want to fix it. If the car is good and you go back to that dealer for routine maintenance, they're going to remember that you killed them before, and they're not cutting you a break on anything. There's no such thing as a one-off. I mean, anybody listening to this, they're going to say, yeah, well, I can remember this one time I had a one-off. All right, yeah, compared to all the other times.
So interesting.
So why do we get caught up in this idea then, apart from the studies and the sort of like the false dichotomy that they promote? Why do we get convinced that this idea that negative emotions are more valuable than positive emotions, and Chris? And what can you teach us that challenge those perceptions?
Well, it's what gets held up to us all the time. Like before my book came out and people just knew that I taught negotiation. I was a hostage negotiator. I taught negotiations in business school. And I would go to, business events. or any sort of professional gathering, and they say, hey, it's Chris Voss. He was a hostage negotiator. He teaches business negotiation at Georgetown. And every time somebody would speak up and go like, you know what, let me tell you about this deal I negotiated. You know, I had them over a barrel. You know, they had nowhere to go. I had all the leverage. Now, if you're in a gathering, the only person that speaks up is the person that hammered somebody. You see over and over, wow, I guess if I want to have a deal that I brag about, you know, show off to the boys, you know, prove to my brother-in-law how smart I am, I got to go out and I got to beat somebody down. And then I'm going to brag about it for the rest of the time. So I'm afraid our examples in real life and in movies and in TV are always of somebody smashing somebody else. Those are the models that are held up to us.
So let's go back to the role play then. You've already said to me, it seems like I have a plan. What's the next thing that you would normally do with someone?
Well, first of all, I'm going to listen to your game plan. So if I get an idea of whether or not, have you ever done this before? Or do you have any sort of a sense for the environment? Like what are the challenges? I'm probably going to say, you know, how'd this go when you tried it in the past? What happened? What sort of obstacles you run into? I'm really more interested in whether or not you have any idea of what you're getting into and how collaborative you're going to be. Because even if you cut me a great deal financially, if dealing with you is painful, if it sucks the life out of me, if we're just not a good match, it's going to be blood money and I'm not going to want it. Even if it's lucrative, it's just going to be too painful. And I want deals that I want to repeat. So now I'm starting to gather an idea of what our relationship's going to look like. Can I ask you a question at all and have you answer, or do you just want to dismiss me? You know, how you do anything is how you do everything. That's going to be the way you are to deal with the entire duration of the relationship. And I want to know what I'm getting into with you as a business partner, because I'm into long-term prosperous relationships, positive sum games. And if you are not, then even if you throw a lot of money on the table, it's still going to be painful.